A strong hold over current affairs is your way to succeed in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Brace yourself and get detailed coverage of relevant news both nationally and internationally. With the monthly current affairs revision program starting from 26th October at 5 p.m. Enroll today and elevate your current affairs knowledge with comprehensive coverage of current affairs compiled through relevant sources such as the Hindu Indian Express, Economic Times, PIB Yojana, and others. Expert support and personalized mentoring. Comprehensive assessment through MCQs and mains-oriented questions.
Hello and welcome to this edition of News Today. Without delay, let's have a look at the headlines first. Prime Minister congratulates President-elect of the United States of America. Union Cabinet approved PM-Vidyalaxmi scheme. Cabinet approved an equity of Rs 10,700 crore for Food Corporation of India. UN Habitat released World Cities Report 2024, Cities and Climate Action. Central Water Commission report highlights expanding Himalayan glacial lakes. Primordial black hole LID 568, rapid truth revealed by Webb telescope observations. In our very first news, the Prime Minister of India has extended his congratulations to the President-elect of the United States, who has secured a decisive victory representing the Republican Party. Now let's take a moment to understand the US presidential election process, a multi-step system with distinct stages. It all starts 1 year before the elections, when candidates from the two major parties, Democrats and Republicans, began their campaigns. During this phase, candidates engage in televised debates to discuss their policies and gain public support. Next are the primaries and the caucuses. Here, party members from across the states cast their votes and deliberate on which candidate they want to represent them in the general election. After that, both parties hold national conventions. Each party officially selects a final presidential nominee who then chooses a vice presidential candidate to run alongside them. The journey continues with the general election, where voters in each state cast ballots for president and vice president. Interestingly, when Americans vote, they are actually voting for a group called the electors. These are members of the Electoral College. In most states, if a candidate wins the majority of the popular vote, they receive all of that state's electoral votes. Maine and Nebraska are the only exceptions to this rule. Moving on to the Electoral College itself, there are 538 electors in total. A candidate needs more than half, that is 270 electoral votes, to become the President of the USA. In comparison, India's presidential election is an indirect process involving an electoral college of MPs and elected members of legislative assemblies from the states and some union territories. The election of Indian president is held in accordance with system of proportional representation using a single transferable vote and a secret ballot. Now, when it comes to managing the elections in the US, there is no single centralized authority overseeing the process. Over 10,000 local entities across 3,143 countries each have their own rules. The Federal Election Commission in the US primarily regulates campaign finances, unlike India's Election Commission, which has broader oversight of the entire election process. Finally, United States elections are unique in their consistency, taking place every 4 years on a fixed date, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, a tradition that dates back to 1835. The Union Cabinet has given the green light to the PM-Vidyalaxmi scheme, a major step towards providing financial support for meritorious students pursuing higher education. This new central sector scheme aims to provide financial support to meritorious students for higher studies. This came in light as the National Education Policy 2020 had recommended financial assistance to meritorious students in both public and private higher education institutions. Now, diving into the key features of the scheme. The objective here is to offer collateral-free, guarantor-free loans from banks and financial institutions, covering not only tuition but also other academic expenses. Under the PM-Vidyalaxmi scheme, students admitted to quality higher education institutions are eligible. Currently, 860 quality higher education institutions based on NIRF rankings qualify under this scheme, covering over 22 lakh students. For those who qualify, the benefits are substantial. Loan amounts of up to Rs 7.5 lakhs will receive a 75% credit guarantee from the Government of India. Furthermore, there is a 3% interest subvention for loans up to Rs 10 lakhs during the moratorium period. The scheme operates through a fully digital system. Students can apply for loans and request for disbursement of interest subvention through the PM-Vidyalaxmi portal, with interest payments facilitated via e-voucher and central bank digital currency wallets. And importantly, the scheme supplements the existing Pradhan Mantri Uchchatar Shiksha Protsahan scheme. Wrapping up, let us also talk about the Pradhan Mantri Uchchatar Shiksha Protsahan scheme. Its objective is to provide financial assistance to meritorious students from low-income families to meet a part of their day-to-day expenses while pursuing their higher studies. Their eligibility will be decided based on the results of the higher secondary or class 12 board results. Under this, a maximum of 82,000 fresh scholarships per annum will be provided. Lastly, the PM-USP scheme has two key components: the Central Sector Interest Subsidy and the Credit Guarantee Fund scheme for education loans, with 82,000 fresh scholarships awarded annually.
In a significant move, the Cabinet has approved an equity infusion of 10,700 crore rupees for the Food Corporation of India, or FCI. This fund will be utilized as working capital by the FCI during the financial year 2024-25. The decision aims to strengthen the agricultural sector and secure the welfare of farmers across the nation. Now, let's talk about how the FCI operates financially. The FCI procures food grains for the central pool at procurement prices, also known as minimum support price or MSP, and issues them at central issue prices set by the Government of India. However, these issue prices don't fully cover the economic costs involved in the procurement, movement, storage, and distribution of food grains. The difference represents the consumer subsidy for the Public Distribution System, or PDS, which is covered by the Government of India. But challenges remain. FCI's direct procurement share is low, less than 5%, and many of its facilities are underutilized. Additionally, there are issues of leakages in godowns, procurement of poor quality stocks, and transit losses. To improve FCI's efficiency, a standing committee has given several recommendations. These include assisting state governments in building adequate infrastructure for effective procurement, adopting scientific storage measures to prevent food damage, and strengthening the vigilance mechanism in coordination with states. And lastly, a quick overview of FCI itself. Established under the Food Corporation Act of 1964, the FCI operates as a public sector undertaking under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. Its mandates include procuring food grains at the MSP to protect farmers' interests, distributing food grains nationwide under the Public Distribution System, or PDS, and maintaining operational and buffer stocks to ensure national food security. With this infusion of funds, the government aims to fortify FCI's capabilities, enhancing both agricultural support and food security across India.
In our next news, we will talk about the UN Habitat's latest World Cities Report 2024, Cities and Climate Action, which sheds light on the crucial link between cities and climate change. This report reveals that cities are both major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and are victims to the impacts of climate change and its worst offenders. Let's start with some of the key findings. More than 2 billion people currently living in cities could experience an additional temperature increase of at least 0.5 degrees Celsius by 2040. This exposure brings a pressing need for climate-resilient systems, which would require an estimated $4.5 to $5.4 trillion annually to build and maintain climate-resilient systems. Yet, current financing falls significantly short, standing at just $831 billion. Another concern highlighted is the shrinking green space in urban areas, which dropped from 20% in 1990 to only 14% in 2020. Unfortunately, climate interventions have inadvertently worsened conditions for vulnerable communities. For instance, green gentrification, where initiatives like new parks drive up property values, can displace low-income households. To address these issues, the report offers critical recommendations. It suggests that cities raise revenue by creating public-private partnerships or PPPs and establishing instruments to mobilize climate finance. Additionally, it calls for integrating climate action into urban planning and encouraging bottom-up or locally led climate adaptation efforts to build resilience effectively. And lastly, it calls for strengthening social protection programs, adopting nature-based solutions that address climate shocks. Now, a quick overview of UN Habitat formed in 1978 following the Habitat 1 conference. The United Nations Human Settlements Programme or UN Habitat is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya. Mandated by UN General Assembly, its objective is to promote socially and environmentally sustainable towns and cities. UN Habitat collaborates widely, partnering with governments, intergovernmental UN agencies, civil society organizations, academia, and the private sector. Some notable documents from UN Habitat include the Vancouver Declaration on Human Settlements or Habitat 1 and the Istanbul Declaration on Human Settlements Habitat 2. And lastly, the flagship publications include the State of the World Cities and the World Cities Report.
Moving ahead, we bring you concerning news from the Central Water Commission's latest report, which highlights the rapid expansion of glacial lakes in the Himalayas due to climate change. This expansion poses a serious risk to local communities and biodiversity, largely due to the increased likelihood of glacial lake outburst floods or GLOFs. Let's dive into some key findings. The Himalayan region has seen a 10.8% increase in the surface area of glacial lakes between 2011 and 2024. In India alone, there's been an even sharper rise, with glacial lakes expanding by 34%. Additionally, 67 lakes in India experienced over a 40% increase in surface area, putting them in the high-risk category for potential GLOFs. There's also a transboundary risk factor, as the expansion of these glacial lakes could impact neighboring countries such as Bhutan, Nepal, and China. Precise monitoring of these lakes was carried out using advanced technologies, including Sentinel-1 synthetic aperture radar and Sentinel-2 satellite imaging. Now, what are glacial lakes? These are water bodies formed from glaciers, formed when a glacier erodes the land and subsequently melts, filling the resulting depression. Now, a quick note about GLOFs. These are sudden, powerful floods caused by the release of water from a glacial lake, which can sit in front, alongside, underneath, within, or even on top of a glacier, causing large amount of water to flow into nearby rivers. One recent example was the GLOF event in Sikkim in October 2023, triggered by the bursting of South Lonak Lake. Let's briefly touch on the Central Water Commission itself. Headquartered in New Delhi, the CWC was established in 1945 following the advice of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It operates under the Ministry of Jal Shakti and is headed by a chairman who serves as an ex officio secretary to the Government of India. The CWC's mission is to promote integrated and sustainable development and management of India's water resources, focusing solely on surface water, while groundwater is handled by the Central Groundwater Board. With this report, the CWC underscores the urgent need for enhanced monitoring and precautionary measures in the Himalayan region to safeguard both people and ecosystems. In our last news, we have an exciting update from the depths of space, brought to us by the James Webb Space Telescope. According to a recent study published in Nature Astronomy, the telescope has observed the rapid growth of a primordial black hole named LID 568, which is expanding at an extraordinary rate, posing a challenge to conventional theories about black hole formation. First, let's talk about primordial black holes. These mysterious entities are believed to have formed from either the explosion of the universe's first stars or the collapse of massive gas clouds in the early universe. LID 568 specifically appeared to be consuming in falling material due to gravitational attraction known as accretion, at more than 40% the Eddington limit. Its rapid growth suggests that significant portion of mass growth can occur during single episode of rapid accretion. It could explain formation of supermassive black holes early in the universe. But what does that mean? The Eddington limit is essentially the maximum energy output that a black hole can theoretically produce through accretion. At this limit, it assumes that the outward force from the radiation produced during the accretion process balances the gravity of the infalling material. Now, let's look at the specifics of LID 568 itself. This supermassive black hole took from approximately 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. It boasts a mass about 10 million times that of our Sun, making it roughly 2.5 times the mass of Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole located at the center of our own Milky Way galaxy. And it's thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope that we are able to make such groundbreaking observations. Known as the largest and most powerful space telescope ever created, Webb is a joint venture by NASA, the European Space Agency (ESA), and the Canadian Space Agency (CSA). This impressive instrument is designed to observe the universe primarily in infrared wavelengths, as the successor to NASA's Hubble Space Telescope. It orbits a sun 1.5 million kilometers away from the Earth at what is called the second Lagrange point, or L2. So with advancements like the Webb telescope, we are uncovering the secrets of the cosmos and, who knows, rewriting the very laws of astrophysics along the way. The personality in news for today is C.V. Raman. He is in news as recently the birth anniversary of C.V. Raman was celebrated. Born at Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu, he founded Indian Journal of Physics and Indian Academy of Sciences, registered as society under Societies Registration Act in 1934. For his contributions, he was awarded with the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930 and Bharat Ratna in 1954. Moreover, National Science Day is celebrated every year to commemorate his discovery of the Raman effect in 1928. Raman effect is a phenomenon when a stream of light passes through a liquid. A fraction of light scattered by liquid is of a different color. Through his actions, he showcased the values of scientific rigor, fortitude, excellence, curiosity, and more.
As we conclude today's main news, let's have a look at some quick updates. Center for Development of Telematics and IIT Roorkee signed an agreement for the development of millimeter wave transceiver for 5G rural connectivity. This agreement is signed under the Telecom Technology Development Fund scheme. Recently, second meeting of the India-Caribbean Community Joint Commission was held virtually. The Caribbean Community is a regional organization to promote economic integration and cooperation in the Caribbean region. Fifth edition of Vietnam-India bilateral army exercise has started at Ambala, Haryana. This edition marks a significant increase in scope with by-service level participation for first time by personnel of Army and Air Force from both countries. MOEFCC has introduced new rules for conducting inquiries and imposing penalties on polluters after Supreme Court's pollution order. One of the new rules include complaints against violators of environmental regulations can be initiated by key bodies including CPCB, SPCBs, pollution control committees and others. Sagar Defence Engineering completes Sagarmala Parikrama autonomous voyage with Indian Navy support. Sagarmala Parikrama aligns with global advancements in autonomous surface and underwater systems, offering transformative applications in both military and civilian sectors. Fisheries Department notified development of tuna clusters in Andaman and Nicobar Island under Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. Tuna fish is a group of saltwater fish known for their streamlined bodies, powerful swimming ability, and wide distribution in tropical and temperate oceans. Practical implementation of agrivoltaic systems was showcased in 7th session of the International Solar Alliance. Agrivoltaic farming is the practice of growing crops underneath solar panels. Mysuru Sangeet Sugandh Festival is celebrating the revered Dasa tradition of Carnatic music of Haridasa movement. It originated in Karnataka and spread to eastern states such as Bengal and Assam. This movement was started by Haridasas and took shape in the 13th to 14th century. Before we sign off, let's challenge your understanding in today's installment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this episode of News Today engaging. For solutions to the quiz and to access the PDF version of News Today, please visit the provided links in the description below.